when your business is running and focused on the sweet spot, you're creating a lot more efficiency in the business, and efficiency equals profitability. So if you don't know the sweet spot, that's a gap already that we're identifying. You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question: what has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling. I'm the business psychologist, the author of the 4-Week Vacation and the How to Hire the Best series, as well as the founder of Tap the Potential, where we coach entrepreneurs like you to design sustainably profitable businesses that give you more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. Because after all, we believe work supports life, not the other way around. Weekly on the Profit by Design podcast, we bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. Hey there. Are you experiencing breakdowns in communication with your team? Or are you questioning if your team is as productive as they could be? And maybe you're even dealing with disengagement on your team. Today, I want to share with you some strategies to help you deal with all of this. And actually, the strategy that I'm going to teach you is one thing, one thing that you can do that will help you with resolving communication problems on your team. It will help you with boosting productivity, and it will help you with engaging your team members. And the biggest benefit is that this is one of the keys to support you in retaining A players on your team. So, you want to retain those A players. You work really hard to get them on your team. They're highly valuable team members. So what I'm teaching you today on the Profit by Design podcast is profit boosting one-to-one meetings, quick and effective strategies to get these off the ground in your business. And if you're already doing them, I think what I'm going to share with you today is going to help you make them more effective for you on your team. I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling. I'm the business psychologist here at Tap the Potential. And we go live on the Profit by Design podcast every Friday, 11:30 Central on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So here's what we're covering. I want to dive into how to set clear objectives and goals for your one-to-one meetings. I'm going to give you tips for scheduling and structuring your one-to-one meetings so that you can run them in a very efficient way. I also am going to give you some strategies for providing constructive feedback to your team members and how to utilize one-to-ones and performance evaluations and using those together to help you make sure your A players are really focused on the results that you need them to be delivering for you. There are some common challenges that come up with one-to-one meetings. We encourage our clients at Tap the Potential and our Better Business, Better Life program to be doing regular one-to-ones. And we get a lot of questions in our groups from clients. So those are common challenges, and I'm going to go over those with you today and give you strategies for dealing with them. And you're going to leave today with some actionable takeaways and next steps for implementing one-to-ones with your team members. And if you're already implementing, you're going to also have some steps for improving your one-to-ones from our time together today. I want to share with you a tool that could be really helpful for you. So we're already in Q4, right? I mean, time flies so quickly. So if you're really getting focused on what can you do in Q4 to master your time and profit, I want to give you a tool. So if you give us 20 minutes of your time and take our Better Business, Better Life assessment, you will get your results from your assessment that will show you, number one, your level of burnout, and number two, you will see the gaps that exist in your business that if you fill those gaps will allow you to have a more profitable business that gives you more time for what matters most. And that's what we're all about here at Tap the Potential, is making sure you have more time for what matters most. So it takes about 20 minutes to take the Better Business, Better Life assessment, but the results are highly valuable to you. So head on over to tapthepotential.com/assessment. And we're doing something fun. we are giving away signed copies of my book, The 4-Week Vacation, to all of our assessment takers this quarter. So what are you waiting for? Not only are you going to find out what to work on in your business to have the greatest impact on improving your profit and your quality of life, but you're also going to get to read about how to set your business up so that it can run without you and you can take more vacations in the year ahead, right? That would be awesome. All right, so let's dive in here. So doing one-to-ones with your team members is the greatest opportunity to laser focus your team members on their highest value contribution to your business. So you've heard me say that A players can be 900 to 1200% more productive than warm bodies in a business. That is absolutely true. They come with a great attitude, they're highly motivated, and they are go-getters. They solve problems and they get things done. However, if you don't give your A players clear direction, they are not going to be 900 to 1200% more productive than the warm bodies in your business. So we want to get your A players highly focused on the key result that they are responsible for delivering in the business. So every one of your team members should know what their key result is. And the key result is that thing that if they can only get one thing done in a given day or a given week, this is the one thing that they focus on. And you want to tie it into the sweet spot of the business and the profitability. So your A players should be, if I ran into one of your A players on the street and I said, hey, tell me what's your key result. Great. Now tell me, how does that tie to the sweet spot of the business? Great. Now tell me, how does that impact the profitability of the business? Would your A players be able to answer those questions for me? That probably not. Okay. But if they can't, that's a great opportunity. We've just identified a gap for you that you want to educate your A players about. Here's the sweet spot of the business, and here's what you do, and here's how it relates to the sweet spot. And now in the ideal world, you will have A players whose strengths set them up to be able to deliver that key result with ease day in and day out, because it's what they do and it's what they're good at and what they're naturally inclined to do. So that's how we get your A players to have that high level of productivity and impact in your business. So I'm guessing that your A players don't know exactly what the sweet spot is of the business. You may not know exactly what the sweet spot is in the business. And if you don't, I would encourage you, book a call with us and talk to us about getting into our Better Business, Better Life program, because that's what we'll help you do, is we'll help you identify that sweet spot. It's part of the Tap the Potential solution and taking your life back from your business, because when your business is running and focused on the sweet spot, you're creating a lot more efficiency in the business, and efficiency equals profitability. So if you don't know the sweet spot, that's a gap already that we're identifying. And if you don't know exactly what it is, though, if you can talk to your A players about, here are our top clients and here's what they appreciate most about what we do for them, that's a good start towards helping your A players to get focused on the sweet spot. And then talk to them about how the one result that they're responsible for delivering ties into that sweet spot. And really what you're doing in that conversation is you're showing your A player how they can be the hero in serving the top clients in the business. So all of this needs to happen in one-to-one meetings. And you may have to have multiple conversations with your team members about this in their one-to-one to keep them focused. And that's the beauty of a weekly or every other week one-to-one with your team members, is because you're continually bringing them back to, here's the focus, here's the focus. And when we have A players on our teams, because they are so competent and capable, we end up asking them to do all kinds of things. And it can be very easy for them to lose focus on, well, what is the main thing that I'm supposed to be doing in the business? And so when you have these regular one-to-ones, it's your way of keeping them focused. And your one-to-one is also your opportunity to check in with them each week to support them in achieving this result. So you're going to be checking in. They're going to be reporting to you what their key result is on a weekly basis. You're going to be asking them, well, if the result is not where it needs to be, you're going to be asking them, well, what support do you need? And how can I help you? Do you need tools and equipment? Is there something else going on in the business where it's causing a breakdown and it's impacting your ability to deliver this result? Those one-to-ones allow that to happen. But the one-to-ones are even more than that. This is your opportunity to really get to know your team members on a personal level. Like, who are they? What makes them tick? Why is this job important in their life? Like, what is it a stepping stone to for them? What personal goals do they have? And when you're able to understand your A-player team members as individuals and what matters most to them, it unlocks so many opportunities in the business because you will see ways that you can support them in achieving their goals. It may have nothing to do with the work that you guys do together, but you will come across resources or connections that you can make for them that will help them achieve their goals. And that's the best because then your A players feel that you're really invested in them, like you really care about them as a person. And it also gives you ideas, though, for giving them gifts. If you want to do surprise bonuses for them, if they have gone above and beyond in some way and you want to surprise them with a bonus or a gift card, you will know like where to focus that because you'll know about them and you'll know what matters. And all of this happens in the one-to-one. And so I cannot emphasize enough how important just the consistency of having regular one-to-one meetings is for building trust with your A players, where they will really come to feel like you have their back and you care about them. This is one of the biggest keys to retaining A players in your business is they feel that someone on the team cares about them, is personally invested in them, and wants them to succeed. But the other thing that is so important about the consistency and how that builds trust is that if you have to deliver critical feedback at some point, you have a lot of positive deposits in their emotional bank account because you've invested so much in them, so much time and effort and energy in getting to know them and supporting them in the work that they're doing and also supporting them in their personal goals. So they're going to be much more receptive to personal feedback or critical feedback. And the other thing about that is they are much more likely to come to you early on when they have a problem that may interfere with their doing their work, or maybe it's a problem that could, if it's left to fester, could become so frustrating to them that they would quit. And that's the worst thing, is you don't want to have an A player quit and have them tell you the reason that they're quitting has something to do with some minor problem that started 6 months ago. You had no idea it was going on and it's festered now for 6 months. And now it's become something that you can't solve for them. And they're so frustrated they're done. And so I've had or business owners say to me, well, Dr. Sabrina, I don't really need to do one-to-ones because I'm in an office with my team members every day. We see each other every day. We do a huddle, we start our day, and then we're off. But we see each other. So I'm sure they'll talk to me if something's going on. No, they won't. And the reason they won't is because you don't have dedicated time set aside for them. They're not likely to talk to you about more sensitive things where other people could overhear. And they may not feel comfortable because you haven't had the dedicated one-to-one time. They may not know you as a person. They may just know you as the boss. And when you do the regular one-to-ones, they know you as a person. You're a real human being, and they know that you care about them. And that makes it easier for them to open up and talk to you. So one of the things that we find in our businesses that are doing regular one-to-ones is a lot of the communication problems go away. Another side benefit, by the way, of one-to-ones is drive-by questions that disrupt you and your day. They go away. The got a minute type questions. When you're doing a one-to-one, your team member has a place that they can bring those questions to, a time and a place, and they are confident. If you keep your meetings on a regular basis, they will feel confident that they can bring that into a meeting with you and it will get addressed there. So they are a lot less random in how they're using their time, which makes them more productive. You are dealing with fewer interruptions, which makes you more productive. So Let's talk about how to structure your one-to-ones. So I recommend that you set aside about 20 to 25 minutes. We want to keep these short and sweet because you're busy. And I recommend that you have an agenda that you and your team members are aware of. So number one, the team members need to know this is scheduled for 20, 25 minutes. And here's our agenda. This is what we're going to cover. I also recommend that you have your team members prepare for the one-to-one. So they come in with certain agenda items prepared ahead of time that they share with you, maybe like in a Google Doc, or maybe it's a written sheet and they just bring it in and hand it to you when they sit down. But at least you know they have had their brain on the topic before they're sitting down in front of you, so that this is going to be a good use of time together. And at a minimum, you want to have them bringing in their key result to the meeting. So from week to week, they're showing up and saying, here's my metric. This is where I am this week on this key result. When you start the meeting, I always recommend that you start with wins and successes. That is one of our traditions here at Tap the Potential. We start every meeting with clients and team talking about wins and successes. It gets the meeting off to a great start. It creates a positive vibe. It reminds us, even in the midst of challenging times, it reminds us, hey, we have some wins here. Let's celebrate. And when we get into that positive frame of mind, it makes it much easier if there are difficult topics to discuss later in the meeting. Another question that you can ask is, how have you gone the extra mile, added value, stepped up, gone out of your way to serve our top clients and customers in the last week? I like asking this question because not every team member toots their own horn. A lot of us have been socialized that we should not brag. I mean, that's just part of our culture, is we're not supposed to brag about ourselves, right? We're supposed to be humble. Well, if your team members don't tell you where they're stepping up and going out of their way, how are you supposed to know? Right? So at Tap the Potential, I encourage our team members, document the cool things that you're doing and tell me about them. And especially when we have performance evaluations, put all that stuff on your performance evaluation because we need to know about it. We don't always see it. So this gets your team members in that habit of capturing the ways they have gone out of their way. And if they do this every week with you, or every time they have a one-to-one, by the time it's their performance evaluation, they have all of this logged for the course of an entire year, and they can just go through and pull that and pop it into their performance evaluation. And then you're good to go. And then you look at them and you realize, wow, they're doing better than I thought they were. It's amazing. So, and by the way, when you just ask this question every week in a one-to-one meeting, it reminds your team members that you expect them to go the extra mile and show up and take care of your top clients and customers. So this question has all kinds of ways that it can be beneficial in the business and support what you're after with getting your A players taking exceptional care of your best clients and customers. So the next item on the agenda might be updating on the key result. And this is where they're just telling you where they are. And if they're on track with it, that's great. One of the questions that could be a follow-up question is, what are you doing that's working? Right? So the best thing is that they are on track with their key result, or they are above where it should be. And then you can ask, what are you doing that's working? And really getting them highly tuned into the simple actions they're taking that are getting them their results. Because we always want our A players focused on their highest value activities, the 20% of what they do in a given day or a given week that gets them 80% of their results. They need to know what that is. And it also benefits you and them, because over time, you need to be auditing all the activities that they're doing and looking for things that you can take off their plate and delegate down the organizational chart to someone who is at a more entry level, so that your A players are working from their strengths and they're focused on their highest value contributions. So just asking, what are you doing that's working, gets them focused on just doing more of what works and stop doing the things that don't really seem to have an impact. Another great question that you can ask, and you don't have to ask this every time in your one-to-one, but I like to throw it in a few times every quarter. And I'll say, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being I used my strengths a lot this week, where would you say you are for the past week? Now, this is a very valuable insight for you and your team members, because By the way, how do you find out what their strengths are? We use the People Map assessment, and another great tool is the Strengths Finder assessment. We use both of those, and this really gets our team members clued into their strengths and looking for when they're working from their strengths, because they're happiest and most engaged when they work from their strengths. And so if you're hearing a lot of like ones and twos when you ask this question, it clues you in that you have a team member who's an A player, but they're not working from their strengths, and they're going to lose motivation over time if you keep them in that role. So that means you need to look for a better role for them, a role that's more aligned with their strengths. If they're at a 6 or a 7, that's an opportunity, because it means they're doing some things that hit their strengths, but other things are not. And so you can explore that with them and look at, well, how can you bring more of your strengths into what you're doing with us? And hearing 9s and 10s is phenomenal. That's what we're aiming for. We're never going to be 100% perfect on this, but it gives you kind of a way to gauge where your team members are with respect to this. And it gives you that opportunity. If there's a gap, you have an opportunity to do some problem solving before it goes on too long and they lose their motivation and you risk losing an A player on your team. Another great question to ask is, what challenges or roadblocks are you experiencing? You want to know this. So if something is coming up that's getting in their way, making it difficult for them to do their job, you want to problem solve with them. So asking, what support do you need from me? That lets them know you have their back. You want to help them. You really want them to succeed. You can also ask, what are you working on next? So it gets them focused on the week ahead and what's the next thing that they're going to tackle or work on. And closing the meeting by just asking for takeaways. What are you taking away from our conversation today? That gives you a sense of what they took in and what was meaningful for them. Now, that's the regular one-to-one meeting agenda. Every few weeks, I think it's important to ask them about how are things going in their personal life, check in on their family, and just know who they are and what matters to them. Talk to them about what their personal goals are. When our business owners start out doing the one-to-ones, and maybe you have team members who've been with you for 6 or 7 years and you've never done a one-to-one with them. And maybe they're more quiet people. They don't have a lot to say. And so you start the one-to-ones with them and they don't have much to say in the one-to-ones. And they're kind of like caught off guard because they don't know what's supposed to happen in a one-to-one. So don't put pressure on yourself and your team member that there has to be a big in-depth discussion every meeting. It's okay for it to be, you may have somebody who does a one-to-one and you're out of there in 10 minutes. That's okay. But the more consistent and more frequent you are in doing the one-to-ones, those more quiet team members, the ones who are more reserved, they will start to open up and trust you more, and they will have more to say. And the best way to handle those situations is to give them the agenda ahead of time so they can prepare and come in and know what you're expecting to talk about with them. So let's talk about tips for scheduling one-to-ones. I know you're busy, right? That's the nature of the beast, is you have a lot on your plate and it can feel very daunting to schedule one-to-ones with all of your team members. So the standard, like the best practice, I'm going to give you that, and then I'm going to teach you how to make it simple for getting started. So the best practice is to have weekly or every other week one-to-ones. Set time on your calendar. It needs to be a time block that is dedicated at the same time each week for each person, 20 to 25 minutes. That consistency builds trust. And for you, I want to invite you to treat these meetings like you would treat a meeting with your best client. You wouldn't cancel a meeting on your best client because something came up, right? You wouldn't do that. Your A players are your best clients. They really are. And you want them taking care of your best clients and customers in the business. So if you want your A players to show up and do a great job for your best clients and customers, you have to show up for your A players. And once you have team members, and it's no longer just you in the business, your number one responsibility shifts from taking care of your clients and customers to taking care of your team, so they, in turn, can take great care of your clients and customers. When I hear about team members not treating clients and customers well, I get really curious and I wonder, well, is the business owner doing a one-to-one with these team members? And a lot of times, no, that's not happening. The team members are expected to do a job, and there's no ongoing feedback. There's no opportunities for discussing where they're getting off track, and things are building up and problems are growing over time. So the one-to-ones really help you catch things from week to week before they become big problems. And when you are showing that you dedicate time for each of your team members and you slow down and you listen to them, you have them come into an enclosed office, not out there on the floor where everyone can hear, but in an enclosed office. You turn off your phone, you shut off email notifications, close your computer screen or get away from the computer, and you sit there and you make eye contact with them and you listen to them. That is how you show them that you value them. And that's how to do an effective one-to-one. So let's shift here and let's talk about how to use your one-to-ones as a tool for delivering constructive feedback, and also how to use your one-to-ones in conjunction with performance evaluations. So I've already said this at least 4 times now, that consistency builds trust. The best situation you can be in is that you've had ongoing one-to-ones with a team member, and now something has come up, their performance has slipped in some way, and you need to give them some critical feedback about that. If you've had those ongoing one-to-ones, you have a lot of trust built up and you have a lot of deposits, positive deposits in the emotional bank account before you're making a withdrawal. That critical feedback could be a withdrawal. So you want to have a lot of positive deposits built up before you have to make a withdrawal with some critical feedback. And the easiest way to do this is in the one-to-one, bring up, hey, may I give you some feedback? Most likely your team member is going to say yes. And at that point, just share, here's what I've observed. You've been making a lot of mistakes recently, and that's not like you. I'm curious, what's going on? And then put the imaginary duct tape over your mouth and listen. Just see what they say and just be quiet and let them talk. And after they've shared with you whatever it is that's going on, ask, well, what are your ideas for turning this around? And then again, put the imaginary duct tape over your mouth and listen. If they come up with good ideas for how they're going to turn it around, that's great. Most likely they will have some ideas about that. Then you can ask, what support do you need from me? And they'll tell you if there's anything that they need you to do. A lot of times A players will say, I know this is on me. I need to fix this. And here's what I'm going to do. And then ask, well, how will I know you've improved? And then they'll tell you, oh, I'll come back next week to the one-to-one and I'll bring you this XYZ result and I'll show you. Or I'm going to go fix this thing that I messed up over here. I'm going to go talk to the customer. I'm going to make it right. Here's how I'm going to do it. And then I'll come back and I'll tell you after I've done that. So that's the simplest way. That's coaching. And it's the simplest way to deliver feedback. And being able to do this on a weekly basis where you catch things early on before they become big performance issues is really the ideal scenario. And I see we've got some comments here. Josh Willard said, little problems are like bananas. They all go bad at once. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. You want to catch these little problems early on so that you don't have bigger problems. And, there's also the saying, I'm going to mix metaphors here. There's also the saying, one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. If you have one team member who is causing problems in the business and you're doing one-to-ones with all your team members, you will hear that team member's name come up over and over in those one-to-ones. And it will become really clear, like, oh my goodness, this issue that I thought was just a minor issue with this team member, it's actually impacting us in multiple ways across the company, and it's impacting other A players. So it gives you more of a perspective on handling the situation and the severity of the situation. I think one of the worst things is when you have a team member who's had ongoing performance issues and you've let it just fester for months and months and months, and you finally let that team member go. And then after they're gone, all the other team members come to you and say, I don't know if you knew that this was going on and that was going on. And it's kind of like, if I would have known all that, I would have addressed this months ago. I only knew this little sliver of it. So if you have the one-to-ones, you have that opportunity to hear from multiple team members all these things as they are happening, and they're not building up over time. All right, so let's talk about how to use the one-to-ones in conjunction with the performance evaluation. So the performance evaluations are A lot of times business owners say, I really hate doing them because they take so much time and effort. If you're doing regular one-to-ones, the performance evaluations are a breeze. They should go pretty quickly because you're very familiar with the team member, what their performance is and how they're doing. And basically, you're just summarizing for the year what their performance has been. And I recommend that when you structure your performance evaluations, you keep them really simple. You identify the clear expectations for the role and the results that they're expected to deliver. And those are listed out on the performance evaluation. There should be no surprises. This should be talked about regularly in the onboarding process and in the one-to-ones. And then you have your immutable laws, the core values of the business. And you rate your team member on a scale of 1 to 3. Don't do 1 to 5 and don't do 1 to 10 because that creates way too much gray area that you have to navigate. So a 1, 2, 3 system is super simple. 3 is exceeding expectations, 2 is meeting expectations, and 1 is not meeting expectations. And then you give the performance evaluation to the team member, let them rate themselves, and then you rate them. And then you have a meeting and you discuss if you guys are in alignment with how you see the team member's performance or if there's gaps. Talk about that. And if they are not meeting expectations, then I would recommend doing a performance improvement plan with them. And you've documented where they're not meeting expectations on the performance evaluation. In your meeting with them, you identify 2 to 3 corrective actions they need to take immediately and give them 4 weeks, 6 weeks at the most. And you've given them these clear action items to work on. They agree to it. And then you let them know it is their responsibility in the weekly one-to-one to update you on their progress with respect to those action items. And it's also their responsibility to document their progress on the follow-up performance evaluation with respect to those action items. So when you meet in 4 to 6 weeks again, they are coming in, they filled out their performance evaluation, and they've laid out, here's what I've done to improve. And hopefully at that point, they're meeting expectations and you go forward and it's great. A lot of times, if they are not in the right seat, they're not an A player, they're not the right person for what you need, you will see that they are not taking action on those action items in that 4-week period or that 6-week period. And it's perfectly fine. If you're going to have to let them go, you don't have to wait the entire 6-week period. You can just document they did not meet these expectations. And it's been 2 weeks since the performance evaluation. They haven't brought any improvements into the one-to-ones. Let them go. The other thing that I want to say about performance evaluations is we have this idea in our head that they have to be annual. They don't have to be annual. If there is a clear ongoing gap in performance, do a performance evaluation. It's needed then. Don't wait 6 months because it hasn't been a year yet. Deal with the problem as it starts to happen. Get in front of the problem. Don't let it fester. Okay, so let's talk about overcoming some common challenges. I've already talked about one of the common challenges, and that's a team member who's not opening up. Be patient, give them a clear agenda, and as they do more frequent one-to-ones with you, they will gradually open up and become more talkative over time. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have the team members who are really talkative. And you do a one-to-one and it's supposed to be 20 minutes and 2 hours later you look up and you're still talking. That can be a challenge. So here's where you want to set a clear time expectation, have an agenda, and ask them to prepare ahead of time so that they're coming in and they know exactly what they need to talk about with you, and you see the agenda and you know where to go with them and where to really focus. And then the other strategy is when you have about 5 minutes left in your meeting, look at your watch and say, I'm noticing our time. We only have 5 minutes left. What else is important to you that we cover? And if that opens up a whole Pandora's box, because sometimes it will, the other strategy is to, instead of asking an open-ended question, is to ask a yes-no question. So instead of saying, what else is there that's important for us to cover today? Say, did we get to what you needed today on the agenda? And if that's yes, no. And if they say no, here's what you do. You say, all right, we're meeting next week. I'm going to prioritize and make sure we get to that first thing next week, and then be sure you do. But what you don't want to do is if they say no, then open up time and you guys dive into it at that point, because then again, it's going to expand and you're just teaching your team member not to respect time boundaries. And that's not good, because we need our team members to be timely in dealing with our clients and customers and anything that they're doing in our businesses. So we want to teach them how we want them to show up, and that is to be focused. And here's the priorities, and here's what we need to get to. So another common problem that comes up in one-to-ones is you're giving performance feedback to a team member and they start making excuses. They're not taking responsibility. They're finger pointing and blaming, and they're painting themselves in the victim role. And so first off, when people do that, they're not A players. A players are not victims. A players are problem solvers. They want to figure out, oh gosh, I didn't realize there was a problem in my performance. I want to fix this. Help me figure this out. They crave the feedback, and they appreciate the feedback. And the other thing that you'll know when you have an A player and you give performance feedback is you will see after that meeting, you will see a steady upward improvement in their performance, a little slide back, but overall it's upward improvement. When you have someone who's in a role that's not the right fit for them, or they're not an A player, and you give them performance feedback, you will see a spike in performance like the next day. And then a couple days later, you'll see it drop off. And then you have to give more performance feedback, and then it'll spike again. And it's that same cycle. And that really starts to feel like you're working harder than they are because you're always having to pull it out of them. That's not a good place to be. So if you have a team member who starts making excuses, one of the best questions is, and what might your role be? And then most likely they're going to deflect and they're going to make another excuse and blame someone else. Just stay with that question in a charge neutral tone of voice and say, and what might your role in this be? You might have to do it 5 times. If you do it 5 times and they continue all the finger pointing, I would just end the meeting and say, it's clear to me you're not willing to accept responsibility for your performance, and put the duct tape over your mouth and let them sit with it. So I want to share a real life case study with you on this. Early on, when we started teaching business owners to do one-to-ones, I had one business owner who came to meeting after meeting with us in our Better Business, Better Life program, talking about frustrations with team members. And we kept encouraging him to do the one-to-ones. We gave the agenda, and, we helped him identify, here's your first person to go do a one-to-one with. And next week he'd come back and it hadn't happened. And what was going on is he was just feeling like the business was out of control and the business was running him. That was number one. But the other thing is that there were lots of communication breakdowns, and he was always just running around and putting out fires. And there was a lot of strife and frustration on the team. And so when he said it takes too much time to do these one-to-ones, and I helped him see, let's count up the hours that you're spending putting out fires. And if you can get in front of the communication problems, how much time would it save you? And so that was eye-opening for him. So that was the first kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I see. I need to make time for these one-to-ones. And then his other reason that he wasn't doing these is he said, you know what? We see each other every day. I talk to them every day. But what he wasn't paying enough attention to is that he was never talking with them one-to-one. There were always 3 or 4 people standing around. They never had his full attention. And because he was on his phone and putting out fires all the time, they never felt like he cared. They always felt like whatever was the fire, that's where his attention was, and it wasn't on the team members. And so once we said just, hey, try this one-to-one, pick one team member, start having regular one-to-ones. And by the way, here's a tip. When you're starting your one-to-ones, don't start with your most difficult team members. Start with your most communicative A players. Those are the ones, they're eager for your attention. They will be so happy that you want to do one-to-ones with them. And they might even schedule them for you and get that regular ongoing meeting on your calendar. So that'll take all of it off of you. You just have to show up and be there for the meeting and be fully present with them. So when this business owner started with the 1A player that he had on his team and doing the one-to-ones, he came back after a few weeks and he said, I cannot believe the things that I have learned by talking to my A player. And he saw serious problems going on with one of their contractors in the business that they were using that he hadn't been aware of. And he was able to address it with that contractor. They actually ended up stopping using that contractor and they went with a different one. And it ended up saving them a lot of rework on projects that would have cost them thousands and thousands of dollars. That came out of a few meetings with an A player on the team. And he would have missed all of that, and it would have cost thousands of dollars in the business. So that really, I hope by this point you've gotten to see, like, here's the value of these one-to-ones. So, by the way, I also want to let you know we have something really fun coming up. I'm doing a workshop in a few weeks on unlocking profit potential using the power of your A players and how to attract them on your team for 10x growth. So that ties into everything we're talking about today. So if you want to go even deeper into how to really leverage your A players in your business to improve the profit potential in your business, get signed up for the workshop. It's a free workshop. Head on over to tapthepotential.com/workshop. Okay, so let's talk now about some next steps to get you into action. If you've never done one-to-ones, or if you have been doing them and you're hearing some ways that you can improve your one-to-ones. So for those of you who've never done them, your next step is to pick your best team members and schedule one-to-ones with them. Do this consistently with that group of team members for 6 weeks. So maybe it's just 1 to 3 team members that you're doing one-to-ones with, and just try to do it consistently for 6 weeks. Don't try to start out doing one-to-ones with all your team members. You will get overwhelmed and it'll be too much. So when you start with your A players, they're going to be the easiest ones for you to do one-to-ones with. They're going to be the most responsive to having an agenda, completing the agenda ahead of time, showing up and being there. And you're going to have a very rewarding experience, which is going to make you want to do more one-to-ones. So after you get that rhythm down with your first group of team members, then go to your next group of team members and add additional team members that you're doing one-to-ones with. You should not be doing more than 5 team members for one-to-ones. If you have more than 5 team members that you're doing one-to-ones with, you're going to burn yourself out. You're not going to be very present for anybody. If you're trying to do 10 one-to-ones, you're not going to have time to work, number one. But it's very emotionally draining for most business owners to have that many. If you do 5 in a week and you keep them short and sweet, the 20-minute, 25-minute time frame, it's not going to take that much out of you, and you'll actually feel pretty energized by the time you finish your one-to-ones for the week. So if you have more than 5, then you need to train some more team members to be leaders in the company so that they can do one-to-ones with direct reports. We have lots of training that we can provide to help you with that. I would suggest that you take a look at our hiring, leadership, and team development webpage at tapthepotential.com. So you just go to tapthepotential.com and there's a menu and you can see hiring, leadership, and team development. The 2 courses that I would bring your attention to for that are Leadership Bootcamp, which is teaching your A players how to be leaders in the business. We teach them how to identify their strengths and connect their strengths with a sweet spot and talk to you about how their role relates to profitability. So if you feel like all of that I talked about at the beginning of this episode felt kind of daunting, just get your team members in our leadership boot camp and I'll help you with it. We'll make it really easy. And the other course that's very helpful is Coach Approach. And this is where you and your A players who are leaders on your team learn how to have coaching conversations to open up possibilities and move things forward and also deal with performance issues. So those are 2 courses that we offer that can be really helpful. So today I've covered with you how to have these profit boosting one-to-one meetings. And I've given you some quick and effective strategies. We've talked about clear objectives, setting goals for the one-to-ones. We've talked about scheduling and structuring them. We've talked about giving constructive feedback and how to use performance evaluations in connection with the one-to-ones, and how to overcome some common challenges. So the last thing I want to leave you with is that if you have been doing one-to-ones on a regular basis, and you've learned some ways to improve from what you've heard me share today, pick 1 or 2 ways that you want to improve your one-to-ones and focus on that over the next 6 weeks. And then come back and re-listen to this episode and pick your next 1 or 2 strategies that you're going to focus on for 6 weeks. And that'll help you get into that, get your one-to-ones in the place where you want them to be. And if you have team members that you're training to do one-to-ones, have them listen to this episode, right? They'll learn the strategies too. So hopefully I've made this really easy for you and taken some stress off your plate. Next week, be sure to tune in because we're going to have Melissa Swire, our lead strategist, and Caitlin Beaver, who co-teaches the How to Hire the Best course with me. They're going to be sharing key strategies for hiring A players. So you don't want to miss that. And Don't miss an episode of the Profit by Design podcast. Be sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you're listening to podcasts on. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I see a lot of conversation going on in the chat, and I really appreciate that. See you next week. Thank you for spending time with me today. Join me in our Tap the Potential Mighty Networks community at tapthepotential.com/group. Share your aha moments from today's episode, ask me questions, and join in on the fun with your fellow entrepreneurs on the journey to designing sustainably profitable businesses that give you more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. Isn't it time you take your life back? And finally, share today's episode with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.